So in Hilchos Teshuvah, we're in the second chapter, where Rambam's defining for us what Teshuvah is. And he said this, he's defined for us a new definition of what confession does, what vidui does, and a new definition of what Yom Kippur does. We've met them now twice. In chapter 1, the purpose of confession of vidui is to delete the existence of Averos, and the purpose of Yom Kippur is to do that. In the second chapter, the purpose of vidui is to concretize the Teshuvah process, which is a very radical process. It's not as simple as making a change in our behavior. It starts to really impact and open pathways for much deeper authentic self to emerge. And we'll see, by the way, in the later chapters of Hilchos Teshuvah, the Rambam is going to take this much further. Okay, he's laying some groundwork for it now, but at the moment now, the primary focus is still on making changes, but we're beginning to pick up on the fact there could be a lot more going on. And Yom Kippur suddenly becomes this day when Hashem is ready to rebuild the relationship with us. So how can we turn that down? Okay, then, now, where are we up to? We're up to halacha ches. Number 8. The confession that it's the custom of all Israel to say Avol Chatanu, V'hu Ikar Avidui. That is the fundamental of confession. Now, this is different to what he said in the first chapter, but that's because there are different functions over here. This is the vidui that concretizes, the confession that concretizes our teshuvah, not the one that deletes Averos. I mean, some learn even, the Rambam is saying this is the fundamental, but you should do the whole extension of the first chapter's one. Okay, you could learn it that way too. Either way, according to Rambam, it's definitely ideal to do the version of the first chapter. On Hashem, please God, Chatasi, Avisi, Pashati. I've done all these different types of sins, in particular X. I'm upset that I did this. I realized it was no good. I don't want to ever go back to it. I'm ashamed I even did such a thing, right? And I'm never going back to that. That's, and elaborating on that. But at least just the words, we sinned, that's Ikar Avidah, the fundamental. If you've done a vidui, you've confessed over things this Yom Kippur, this is an answer to yesterday's question. You can do the vidui, you can confess again even about things from previous years. Right? Because the fact is that it's like a person who violated the trust of a loving partner or friend, spouse. You never live in a state of non-regret over it. Part of what the relationship is today is the fact that you still always feel that you got what to make up for what you didn't do well in the past. So it's not a problem, even though the Avera has been deleted. You see, this is why this chapter is different to the previous. The previous chapter, once you've done the vidui, once you've done it. But here we're talking about the confession and its Teshuvah aspect. And the Teshuvah aspect, which is the restoration of relationship with God, each year when God comes back and says, I'm fully ready to restore the relationship, we can say, you know what, God, we messed up 2 years ago. And it's amazing you've forgiven us. It's, you know, we don't need to do this every single day of our lives because we don't want to wallow in shame or anything like that. On the contrary, we want to feel the joy and the closeness to Hashem. And that's what we're saying. Hashem, you forgave us. Yeah.
Do you have to call and text people that you spoke Lashon Hara about them?
Great question. Let's deal with that in the next halacha because it's going to come up. Excellent, important question. Okay. Okay, go back to the next Yom Kippur. Even though you've done your teshuvah, so again, this seems like a contradiction between the two chapters, but it's not. Chapter 1's dealing with deleting the existence of any stains or damage in the world. That's done when you do it once, as long as you stay good the rest of your life. But here we're talking about our restoration of our relationship with Hashem. We should remind ourselves every year of the fact that we don't even deserve the relationship with Hashem. Having messed up once in our life would have been enough to lose it, and how grateful we are to Hashem for this relationship. And it's also important because it's very easy for us to spend our lives blaming Hashem. Hashem, why did you do this? Why did you do that? Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? You know, and let's understand, you know, we don't deserve to exist. Existence is a privilege. Even existence in a world of pain is a privilege. Because at the end of the day, we're getting an opportunity in this dark thing to shine a light that will last forever, that will change the world forever. And when we'll re-emerge on the other side in the perfected world, we'll have had a role to play. We didn't deserve that. So this is, and just the love we feel, the fact that Hashem's saying, I'm open. If you just want to commit to be better, I'm here. It's just so powerful. Now let's get to so what's your name?
Aaron.
Aaron's question. Now we go back to kapara. Now we quickly flick back there, right? Because now that we're talking about restoration of relationship, we've got to now bring in this, which is restoration of relationship with people too. So back to chapter 1's point of atonement, where you delete things. That can't do the job. for Averis between humans, if we've hurt somebody. Unlike if we ate something that wasn't kosher or had an intimate physical relationship that wasn't allowed, in any of those scenarios, doing Teshuvah, Yom Kippur, confessing, that does all the work. But not when we've hurt another person. If we hurt a person, we physically damage someone. Or we just curse them. Right? It goes low. We stole from them. Any of these things, anything like this. We did things to other people they didn't want done. And we knew they wouldn't want done. Ein nimcha lo'ila. They are not forgiven. Right? We don't even get to atonement. Not forgiven. Until two things. Number one, we give them what we owe them. And number two, ratzeu means we kind of, it's difficult to translate to English, but we emotionally appease them. So let's give some examples, because this is really, really important in these days leading up now. Let's suppose we know we really hurt somebody, and they know that we hurt them. Okay? We'll come to Lashon Hara soon, because that could be trickier. They know they hurt. When we were in high school, we were so mean to this person, we bullied them, we were terrible. It's not just sending a text on Erev Yom Kippur, if I did anything to you, will you be moichel? Please, if I did anything to you, you did anything to me, or putting a big Facebook or whatever post nowadays, or a little, I don't know what we do now, I guess Facebook's not so, now we do now, whatever you do it, right? Put a nice little Instagram little thing up there and say, if there's anyone out there who I've done anything to, I hope you forgive me. That doesn't work for that. That works for things we don't know about. But if we know there's somebody out there who we were really mean to, even if we were going through a lot ourselves, we have to call that person up and get face to face with that person and say, look, I've been going through my life, and I realized the stuff I did to you in high school was really not nice, and you may have suffered as a result, and I regret what I did. It was wrong, and you may be hurt, and I'm open to doing what it will take to heal, which usually will be enough for the person to turn around and go, thank you so much, I really appreciate that. I can forgive you. But it's not even just saying, please forgive me. It's being miraculous. It's really trying to emotionally acknowledge the pain and damage. And trying to restore them, like be willing to restore. And of course, if there's financial damage, we have to deal with that too. Now here it gets very interesting. Financial damage means if we stole somebody, we took somebody's lunch 2 years ago in high school, then we'd have to pay back. There's a financial cost to that, right? Now, they may be moicheles, they could say, I don't need you to pay me back, it's okay, but really there's financial costs. There's such a thing as stealing off the public as well, that's a really hard one. What happens if you didn't pay your taxes? Right? So that's very hard because you're stolen from the entire, the entire country potentially. I guess you have to donate money to in England, in the revenue, whatever. Yeah. So it's an interesting question. If you use something that you should be paying for and you didn't pay for it, I think you have to try and pay the company. If you can't pay, you have to try. You have to ask a shaila how you pay back. So one needs to think about these things. And now let me tell you about another thing. Indirect damage, which is a machlokas rishonim, whether you actually have to pay for or not, but almost everyone agrees in Shamayim you do. So now suppose a person really, really hurts somebody else and they've had to go through therapy as a result, right? So, one might have to think about, do they have to at least clap Ishmael? These are shaylas one has to ask. How far, how this, how that. But we have to, so there could be real financial damage involved, right, in things we've done, in which case we've got to do our best to pay. If we can't pay it all in one go, let's go out, reach out to that person and make a payment plan. Again, a lot of people will just forgive us and that's fine. But we should be willing to pay back anything we owe financially, but more than that, emotionally to make it up to people who've been damaged as a result. Yeah.
Who is the saying sorry? Who is it for? Is it for you or is it for the person?
So the main thing is it's for the other person. That's what meratzalei. Getting mechila is for me. Getting forgiven is for me. But that's why the Rambam used the word. You've got to be meratzel. You've got to try to really make them comfortable again in a world they may not have been comfortable. Very often, just approaching people is enough. Now, what happens if they don't know? This is a very famous question. Where it seems very clear that in a pure halacha, you can't get full forgiveness without them knowing. On the other hand, as I think Rabbi Sarsadanta says, who says you've got a right to make, if it's going to make them upset now? If you say, by the way, when you weren't in the room, I made such fun of you and everybody was laughing at you, that person may suddenly get very distressed as a result, and that's not, you don't have a right to do that. So you don't have a right to put them in more pain. You have to be willing to go through that humiliation yourself, but not willing to put them into pain. So then the best we can say is, first of all, anyone in the room who was in the room when we might have made fun, we we should try to reach out to say, by the way I behaved was really, really wrong, and I hope you haven't got a wrong impression of that other person. But the person themselves, it may not always be the appropriate thing. Again, sometimes it's just a shayla, and sometimes we may turn to Hashem and say, Hashem, I can't get full forgiveness for this in this world. I'm doing my best. I've decided not to reach out to them only because it will hurt them. Please, to whatever extent I can get forgiveness from you, please forgive me. And you can also daven to Hashem that person should not suffer as a result of what we've done. If they don't know about it, it could even be that we don't need to do ritzui in the sense that they may not have suffered any emotional damage from it. But, okay, there are other people where it's just inappropriate to go to them and ask for mechila for. Right? A standard question that comes up very often is, what about exes who you mistreated in a relationship? Sometimes if reaching back to them is going to cause them pain or could create messy entanglements in relationships, then stay away. That you don't get back into that. That's, you daven to Hashem that any damage came because of you, they'll be healed from, and you don't get involved in. Okay, so those are just some examples. But in principle, says the Rambam now, even though you've paid back the money that you're obligated, you still need to appease them, then ask them to forgive. And remember, here we're talking about more than forgiveness. Mechila means to forget. We're asking them to be able to be healed by it, right? Even if we only hurt the person with words, so we owe them nothing financially, you have to appease them and really encounter them, really try and reach into them. I mean, these are strong words. Until they can reach the point of forgetting, meaning restoring the relationship. Just forgiveness, salicha, is not enough. The fact they won't retaliate, we gain from. We want them to get to the point of mechila where they no longer feel the pain of what went on. That's ideally where we're trying to get to. Again, to the best of our abilities, right? The people we're most likely to have hurt you will need this for as family members, and often they are the most forgiving. But it's worth saying, look, I know, I didn't call you as often as I need, or I know I got into an angry argument with you. The more we can, you always think, what would you like the person to say to us? Sometimes people just message you before Yom Kippur, if I did anything, please forgive me. And you're thinking, well, why didn't you say sorry for such and such a thing, right? So that's how we should think back on ourselves too. What might they be thinking? Why didn't they say sorry for? And by the way, even if we think we were right on something, this is a very important point. This the Mishnah Berurah really brings up, right? In when he talks in Sim Tov Kuf Hey, it is, I think, where he talks. Is it Dalet or Hey? I think it's Hey. Where he talks about. Sorry, no, it's Tov Kuf Vav. Sorry, it's Sim Tov Kuf Sof. Reish Vav. Sorry, getting all mixed up. Tov Reish Vav. That is where it is. Tov Reish Vav, the Shulchan Aruch says, the Galas Mechila, Mishnah Berurah says, we're talking even where you don't think you're the one wrong, but the other person's hurt as a result. That's another interesting thing. That's a Chiddush of Erev Yom Kippur. Unlike, right, mostly we're saying when we've done something wrong, but even if we've not done wrong, if another person got pain because of us, at least we should acknowledge it and be willing to if it's reasonable. If the other person says, yes, you should pay me £1 million to make me happy, okay, that we don't need to do. But at least that's acknowledge, look, I think I'm in the right on it, but I know it was hurtful to you. I just want to acknowledge that, and I wish there would be no pain. And I just want to say I care about you and whatever. To the best of our ability, yeah.
Could we or should we forgive someone who isn't asking for forgiveness or doesn't apologize? Let's say we were wronged, just so that they could have a clean slate? Excellent
question. Excellent question. Let's see if we'll come to the halacha next. See, this is great today. You're all asking the halachas of the questions of the next halacha. That means there's good ashkacha, we're doing well here. Okay, now, what happens if the guy doesn't want to forgive? Right, we're still in Tess. We'll come to Yud soon. Okay, what happens if he doesn't want to forgive? Try to bring a row of 3 people who are amongst his friends. To try to intercede as well and really try to seek from this person forgiveness. If those 3 friends can't help you, then maybe you try a second time and a third time. If he doesn't want to, just leave it. You've done your bit, you've tried, you ask Hashem for the best you can. And in this case, the one who doesn't forgive is the sinner. Okay? We'll come to this soon. However, if the person who you've sinned against and you're asking forgiveness from is your rabbi, your teacher, meaning, go even 1,000 times. I have to tell you a great story, by the way, that I had personally. I'll tell you another story soon, maybe. Okay, I'll tell you this. when I was in high school, so a certain great rabbi came to speak to us in school. And I wasn't so into religion in those days, and he had a very high-pitched voice. And I wasn't really listening to what he was saying, and I made a bit of fun to other boys about the way he spoke or whatever. And years later, when I was in yeshiva, I realized that very possibly I made fun of him, which is also bad, but also he came to give a message and I damaged that. And I started thinking, but unfortunately he passed away. So there's a halacha, we might see soon, that the halacha, that I don't know, I'll get to. Anyway, the halacha is, if a person's already died, so what you're going to do is take a minion to the grave. So I did. I took a minion to the kava and I asked Mechila, the minion replied, Machalach. It's very, very humiliating thing to have to do. And okay, good, that's what you got to do. Much better to apologize to people in their lifetime, believe me. But okay, fine. So that was the story. And Baruch Hashem, hopefully I got Mechila through that. But I realized after I was going through my mind, is there anybody else? And I realized there were some teachers that had been really horrible to, some Rabbi I had in school. So one I managed to find and I went to and I apologized properly and he was really appreciative. And then there was another one where I had not really been anything, I'd been quite good in his classes, but I realized I'd never said thank you. Right? And I realized when you learn this halacha, so I was driving I was living in London at the time, but he lived in Manchester, that's where I grew up. And I went up to Manchester to visit and I was driving the streets and I suddenly saw him in the street and I pulled the car over and I got out of the car. So I just wanted to thank you so much for being such a good Rabbi in school. And you could see he was very appreciative. It's not the sort of thing you probably get that often. Certainly I hadn't got it from me before. So I didn't. I felt really right. And 3 months later he was niftar. So it's a good thing, just do these things as soon as you can. And the amazing thing is, when you apologize to people or when you thank people, almost occasionally you get someone who says, I don't even remember what you did. Very occasionally someone will be very harsh, but in 99% of cases people are just so appreciative and you feel really good that you did it, and now you got a pathway to Mechila and it's amazing. We're going to come now, what about the side of the person who doesn't forgive, right? So the halach is also, now we're up to this 10th one. It's forbidden for a person to be cruel and not ask forgiveness. And not forgive. A person should always be fast to forgive and slow to get into anger. But listen to this. At the time the sinner asks forgiveness and restoration of relationship, forgive with a full heart, and a full soul. And that, by the way, is when somebody does come to us sincerely, and says they really appreciate that they did something wrong to us and they'd like to forgive, we should really try to find within ourselves the ability to forgive fully. Notice it said that they have to come to you and ask forgiveness. What happens if they don't come to you? Let's ask another question. What happens if you're still suffering tremendous pain from what they did? Right? This shaila came up a few times in my life when I passed on to other people of somebody who went through tremendous abuse, let's say, from somebody who was really badly bullied by them. Do they need to really forgive them on Yom Kippur? They can't bring themselves to do it, and they don't want to have the conversation with the person yet. So if the person hasn't asked forgiveness and they come and ask you, should I be forgiving? It may not be the right place emotionally for them to do that. This is not my own thing. This has gone to very great rabbis, and more or less most of them seem to come back and said the same sort of thing. When a person should hopefully get to the point of emotional health one day when they can let it go in the following way. What they can say to themselves is, look, what the person did to me is tremendously damaging and hurtful. They may be a severely damaged human being themselves. And in that sense, I can let go of the pain. And if they were to ever come to me and acknowledge just how damaging they were, if I could see that they've emotionally become healthy and they're serious about it, not just playing a Mechila game Erev Yom Kippur, then I would be open potentially to restoring the relationship, or maybe it just would be, the person there's different levels to aspire to in that sense. The real deep point here, though, is when we can't be Michael, when we can't let it go, it actually hurts us. So there's a subtlety here. Being Michael is not always the same as vindicating the other person. It's not saying what they did is right, it's not saying what they did is good, but we want to get to the place where we can let it go, where we're no longer trapped by the past. Just like our own actions, we want to let go, and our own past choices and mindsets we want to let go. Ideally, we want to let go to the extent to which we're still being held back by the mistakes and damage that others have done to us. So this is where we want to aspire to. But if we're in a place where we're not emotionally ready to confront that or to even say things like forgiveness or anything like that, then we don't need to feel guilty about not being there, especially if they haven't come and asked a sincere mechila, even if they WhatsApped and said, by the way, if I did anything. If they've sat with us crying and saying, what I did was so terrible and so horrific, But again, if we're the person who caused the damage, it's probably better we don't approach the person. That's something which hurts them more. And if we have to suffer the consequence, we'll suffer the consequence, do the best teshuvah we can do, daven for them, donate charities to funds that help victims of this, do whatever we can do, but not. So this is the basic. But the principle, ideally, is just like we want to let go of the mindsets that made us do bad, we want to let go of the mindset that makes us hold on to the bad that others have done too. Yeah.
2 questions. First, is it true that if they haven't come to ask you for forgiveness, let's say, but they do Teshuvah, and if you haven't forgiven them on any level, then you're like kind of blocking their Teshuvah, no?
Well, you're blocking their full restoration of relationship with Hashem, but you're not really the one doing the blocking. That one way or the other, even if you're forgiven them, they still have a damage in their relationship with Hashem. If they know what they did. If they don't know what they did, then no. Then we should just forgive and that's it. If we think they might not even realize they did wrong, then again, assuming it's not causing us damage now, we're just holding on to a resentment and a pain and an anger that's generating in our head. I'll give you an example. Here's a great example of a very trivial, low level, not too painful thing. I don't know if you've ever had this experience driving a car. Sometimes you're waiting to turn into a road and there's a car coming and a car coming. After 7, after 10, after 20, you're just getting very angry. You slam into the road and go out in front of them, right? Now, if you're in those cars coming and some guy's nudging out, you put your car in front. Now, you realize you could go into either one's shoes and not think you're the one doing anything wrong over here. That's a trivial, simple example. But it's possible the person just didn't think they did anything wrong. Let it go. If we know they did something wrong, they haven't come to us for forgiveness. We're not obligated. It's still a good thing to do. But that teshuvah is not complete. Nothing to do with us. So, yes, we should be moichel to the best of our ability, but their teshuvah depends on them coming to us for forgiveness. If they haven't asked for it, that doesn't matter what we forgive, their teshuvah won't be complete.
If someone asks, you should, because you could be potentially blocking.
You should, I made with a caveat of all things. Right. Also, if you know that ongoing, you can make it on condition. You say, I'm willing to forgive you as long as your change is sincere. Somebody came to you once who was being bullied by someone in a high school, and the guy had really asked them forgiveness out of Yom Kippur and seemed very sincere, and they really struggled because the year before they'd forgiven the guy and the guy went straight back to and did it again. So again, I asked a question on their behalf and I was told this, and it makes total sense, everything the Rambam's saying. They could turn around to that person and say, my forgiveness now depends on you not doing it again. Now, whether it's because whether that was the reason or whether the guy matured a lot, their relationship did change that year. Right? So we can do, again, we need to know where we are, right, holding, but in a normal scenario, in a normal situation, we should work on being moichel people, yes. We want to get to that point.
Second one is, what if...
By the way, we try and do that every night. In the Kriya Shema Lamita, Hareini moichel l'chol mishechis v'knitas, if you say it inside, you'll see there's a line there about trying to forgive people, right? So we really meant to try and go through every day, because also for our spiritual development, every anger we hold on to from the past that we're not actively seeking healing from is holding us back. If we're in a healing process, we can give ourselves time.
What if you remember something or something happened in middle school, which is pre-bar mitzvah time?
Yeah.
What's the shot?
The people who did it are considered under bar mitzvah, they're not considered responsible. And again, to the best of our ability, we should forgive. If, by the way, we really, really can't forgive what someone did, and it's possible for us to approach them and talk to them about it, then we should do that too. That's the pasuk of don't hate your brother, the other way around. Don't hate your brother in your heart. But there's a way to rebuke people, which is not to say, you did this wrong, is to point on, I want to just share with you, I know we were all children, I know we were all young at the time, but because of that interaction, I have struggled. Right? Talk more about yourself than about them. It's always important generally when you're trying to communicate with others, don't talk about what they're doing wrong, talk about how much sensitivity and pain you have. Right? Okay, but generally speaking, if it's not that sort of thing, it should be, we can forgive 13-year-olds. All teenagers are damaged people, basically, right? Or people hurt others because they hurt themselves, or they're insensitive. We're all unwell. The Roifei Cholam, we're all ill. God's healing all of us all the time. It depends how bad it was. It depends what it is. Is it something you should confront them on? Is it not? If they haven't, like I say, let's go through the different things. We should be looking to forgive, and where we can't forgive because it's too painful, we should be looking to get help to work through that. But our ideal in life, for our own sake, never mind theirs, is to get to the point where we can let it go. Let the resentments and the nakama and the natira, the vengeance and the grudges, we should be able to let go even just for our sake. Never mind theirs. Get help where we can. But we shouldn't feel guilty if the damage has been so deep, right, that we just can't let it go. Especially if they haven't come and asked anything for us. But maybe we should be getting help to get ourselves to the place where we can, without vindicating them. They could have still done the most horrific, terrible things, but we can let go of the pain we're holding on to. That's the key we want to try to get to. And again, if anybody's watching this who's going through tremendous things themselves, we should never feel guilt and shame because of what someone did to us that we can't forgive. Okay? That's not what the Rambam's saying here. Yeah, let's just make sure we're finished. Let's just quickly get to the end of Yud Aleph. And the Rambam goes on, says, we should try not to take revenge, we should try not to bear a grudge. This has always been a hallmark of what identifies a natural characteristic of the Jewish people. Right? If we're in the right place and we want to really touch our Jewish identity, it should be the willingness to let go of the grudge that we'd have against others. But there's nations in the world who have character traits of what's called aredas halev, uncircumcised of heart, where the character trait is evrasa shomer netzach, where the grudge can be held for centuries. Right? That's one of the reasons why whenever we get persecuted, we try and see, did we do an Aveira, rather than just hate that nation forever. It goes like, fine, they never forgave. I'm just going to say outside, the 11th halacha is the one I described earlier, which I thought I might not get to the end of. If a person sinned against somebody who died, they should bring a minion to their grave and say those words, I sin to Hashem to this particular person, and if they have money, they should pay it to their inheritors. If they don't own any, they should give it to Beis Din and confess. That's the end of chapter 2.